This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media.
Right.
Welcome back. It is absolutely fantastic to have you joining us for today's deep dive.
Yeah, we have a really great one for you today.
We really do. So our focus today is on a highly analytical, well, really a transformative excerpt from an article.
It's called Data Strategy, Turning Dead Logs into Revenue Streams.
Right. And the core thesis here examines a fundamental operational shift for businesses. The piece specifically looks through the lens of emerging commercial hubs in Nepal.
Places like Kathmandu and
Right.
Burgunj.
Exactly. But it's about how any organization anywhere can extract real tangible value from completely neglected digital assets.
Because the strategic implications here, they extend way beyond just one geographic region.
Absolutely.
We are looking at a universal business challenge. It's that transition from just accumulating massive reserves of data to actually, weaponizing that information for market advantage.
Weaponizing the data. I love that phrasing.
Right, because it requires taking the IT department, which is historically just a cost center.
A huge money pit, usually.
Yeah, exactly, and repositioning it into a proactive driver of profitability.
And that is exactly the mission of our deep dive today. We are going to explore how organizations are sitting on this vast, untapped gold mine of intelligence.
Just invisible wealth.
Invisible wealth, right. And how everyday professionals, and we're not talking about Silicon Valley tech giants here, but how normal businesses can practically unlock that wealth. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's get into it. The foundational concept the text uses to frame this whole problem is something called the digital bakara.
The digital bakara.
Right. So in the context of the article referencing those Nepali commercial centers, a bakara traditionally refers to a storehouse.
Like an agricultural storehouse.
Exactly. So a digital bakara is the modern corporate equivalent of that. It is a chaotic, completely disorganized warehouse of hoarded data.
Hoarded being the key word there.
Yeah. Enterprises are capturing these staggering volumes of operational information, and they're just letting it stagnate on servers.
It's so recognizable, too. I mean, the psychology behind that hoarding is completely universal. It's the corporate equivalent of keeping a drawer full of, tangled, obsolete charging cables at home.
Because you have this vague, persistent anxiety that you might need one of them one day.
Right. You never throw out a cable just in case. And companies do the exact same thing with data. They hoard customer service audio files.
GPS pingos from delivery fleets.
Yeah, hastily typed supplier emails, CCTV footage. And they pay premium rates for server space to store all this material.
Yet they extract zero strategic value from it.
Zero.
Which is why the text so aptly labels these things dead logs.
Dead logs. So how do we revive them? Because reviving those dead logs means management has to recognize a critical distinction in their digital assets, right?
They do. Because business leaders are generally highly proficient at managing structured data.
The clean stuff.
The clean, organized information. Formatted neatly in rows and columns.
Your quarterly sales figures.
Right, the supply chain expense sheets, standard accounting software outputs. That's structured data.
And structured data provides this really comfortable, sanitized view of the business. I mean, it's easily exported into a nice bar chart for a board meeting.
Exactly. It'll tell an executive committee, for instance, that regional sales in Province 3 are down 15% quarter over quarter.
Which is a necessary metric, sure, for historical reporting.
But knowing that sales are down 15%, it leaves the leadership flying completely blind regarding the underlying cause.
It measures the symptom, but it doesn't diagnose the disease.
That is the inherent limitation of structured data. It only answers the what.
What, right?
But the competitive advantage, the actual strategic intelligence you need to intervene and change the trajectory of those sales, that resides entirely in the why.
And the why is almost universally buried in that messy, unstructured data.
It's hidden in the context, in the free text fields, in unquantified human interactions.
The article actually gives us some really concrete use cases that illustrate this divide perfectly.
The logistics one is great.
Yeah, let's look at the regional distribution network example. So the structured data neatly tracks fuel expenditures and average delivery delays.
Clean and organized.
Clean and organized. But the unstructured data might be a single informal text note submitted by a truck driver.
Just a quick scribble.
Right, stating that heavy commercial traffic on the Prithvi Highway combined with a minor landslide near the Muggling transit point, means they have to reroute all deliveries through Hitada
For the rest of the week.
for the whole week. Now, if operations management relies solely on structured data,
They're going to completely miss it. They'll just observe a massive spike in late deliveries at the end of the month.
and hold a reactive, angry meeting to discuss poor performance.
Exactly. But if they have a mechanism to surface that unstructured driver's log in real time,
Yeah.
they suddenly possess actionable predictive intelligence,
They can reroute the entire fleet preemptively.
maintain their service level agreements, and just completely mitigate the delay.
It's amazing. There's another scenario from the text focusing on retail distribution that I want to bring up.
The call center example.
Yes. A call center operator logs a seemingly trivial complaint from a shopkeeper in Narayanhat.
Just a quick note.
Just a note that a competing brand from India has just introduced a temporary 5% bulk discount.
Which is suppressing the local order volumes.
Right, and that is not a neatly formatted data point.
Yeah.
You can't just easily feed a shopkeeper's random complaint into a pricing algorithm.
Yet it represents live critical market intelligence.
Absolutely.
Treating that customer interaction merely as an archived historical record, just putting it in the digital Bakara, is a profound strategic failure.
It really is. It forces the company to absorb a deadweight loss. I mean, you are literally paying to store the exact intelligence that if you acted on it could preserve your regional market share.
And for you listening right now evaluating your own operational environment, this requires a hard audit of your workflows.
A really hard audit.
You have to ask yourself, are the unstructured inputs crossing your desk treated as a compliance archive just to be filed away, or are they integrated as a live intelligence feed?
Right. Are you storing dead logs or are you mining for gold? Now, shifting from passive storage to active predictive analysis conceptually, it makes total sense.
But the implementation is where organizations stall.
They always stall, because a prevailing assumption is that extracting qualitative sentiment from thousands of call logs or driver reports, it requires an enterprise-grade supercomputer.
Yeah, the mere mention of artificial intelligence immediately invokes this perceived necessity of massive capital expenditure.
You need a dedicated team of PhD data scientists from DeepMind.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is the text's explicit dismantling of that exact assumption through the application of foundational AI.
Foundational AI.
Right. The strategic approach does not demand proprietary bleeding-edge algorithms. It relies heavily on the 80-20 principle of data science.
Deploying highly accessible, often open-source tools targeted at very specific operational bottlenecks.
Which delivers 80% of the strategic value for a fraction of the complexity and cost.
The 80-20 rule in action. The use cases in the article are just excellent blueprints for this pragmatic approach.
Let's look at the telecommunications sector, or an internet service provider.
Their primary operational metric is customer churn, keeping people from canceling.
Right. Providers possess massive archives of unstructured interactions. Years of customer service chat transcripts support emails.
Angry forum posts.
Yeah, all of it. Now, historically, evaluating that data manually was completely impossible. You can't read a million chats.
No, but a foundational AI strategy approaches this by deploying standard natural language processing models to evaluate the text.
And NLP is not some mythical technology anymore. Management does not need to invent the NLP tool.
They just need to direct existing open source software to scan their specific archives for syntactic markers of frustration.
Words like slow internet.
Or billing error, or intent to cancel. You are essentially taking raw, unstructured human venting and converting it into a quantifiable sentiment metric.
You assign a mathematical value to customer frustration.
That is just brilliant.
And that is the crucial step. The model identifies those high-risk sentiment markers and immediately merges them with the organization's structured data.
Ah, so it brings the what and the why together.
Exactly. It looks at the unstructured sentiment and pairs it with metrics like the customer's historical tenure, their current billing tier.
The frequency of localized service outages they've experienced.
Right. And the synthesis of those two things allows the system to generate a real-time churn risk score for individual accounts.
Which fundamentally changes the operational posture of the retention team.
Completely. Instead of a defensive strategy where a rep tries to salvage a relationship only after the customer calls to cancel.
Which is usually too late.
Way too late. The organization operates offensively. If a high-value enterprise client triggers a critical churn risk score, the provider can proactively dispatch a senior technician.
And maybe apply a targeted credit to their account before the client even begins researching competitors.
And when you evaluate the return on investment on that, The cost of running an open-source sentiment analysis model is statistically negligible compared to the lifetime value preserved by retaining that huge enterprise client.
The financial logic is totally unassailable, and the implications are equally profound when you apply this to physical supply chains.
The consumer goods scenario in the text.
Yes. Because operating a supply chain in a topographically and politically complex environment like Nepal, it involves extreme variables.
From seasonal monsoons in the Terai Plains to localized political strikes.
The bans.
Right, the bans, which can instantly paralyze transit routes.
So optimizing distribution there requires predictive modeling that can account for totally disparate data streams.
Because a purely structured approach, relying just on historical sales data to forecast future demand, it's inherently flawed in a volatile market.
Because last year's sales don't know about next week's monsoon.
Exactly. So the foundational AI approach integrates that historical baseline with unstructured external streams.
Like public meteorological data predicting heavy rainfall.
Logistical reports on road degradation.
And even localized social media velocity regarding upcoming regional festivals.
Right.
But I'm looking at these variables in this supply chain example, and, well, the complexity seems pretty daunting for a standard IT department.
It sounds like a lot.
How does an everyday regional distributor build a predictive model incorporating weather and social sentiment and historical sales without a Silicon Valley budget?
Well, the barrier to entry is significantly lower than people presume. The article highlights that identifying these complex correlations does not require bespoke software.
You don't need a custom app?
No. Competent analysts can build highly effective regression models using accessible environments like Microsoft Excel's analysis toolpack.
It's standard Excel.
Standard Excel or basic Python libraries.
That's incredible. So a straightforward statistical model can identify that a forecast of heavy regional rain occurring simultaneously with a spike in social media engagement for a specific festival reliably predicts a 40% surge in demand for a particular beverage.
Yes. And crucially, that same model factors in the unstructured transit data to flag that the heavy rain will simultaneously cause a 2-day delay in fulfillment from the central warehouse.
Wow. So armed with that foresight, the logistics director just bypasses the standard ordering cycle entirely.
They preemptively position the inventory at the regional distribution center before the rain even begins,
Eliminating the risk of a stockout.
capturing the localized revenue spike.
And actively taking market share from competitors who are still relying on reactive structured ordering systems.
Because the competitors are waiting for the rain to stop.
It is the practical application of statistics to outmaneuver the market. It transitions the IT department from maintaining legacy hardware to functioning as a forward-looking strategic asset.
But the analysis raises a substantial caveat here.
There is a catch.
Right. While the technological tools are increasingly democratized, the primary friction point preventing this transition is human capital.
Because the market lacks a deep reservoir of formally trained data scientists.
And relying on the higher education system to eventually produce enough specialized data scientists to meet enterprise demand, that is a passive failing strategy.
So the text argues for a highly localized, agile solution, the cultivation of internal data translators.
The data translator.
I really want to examine the mechanics of this concept because it sounds somewhat idealized. The premise is that a data translator is not a software engineer.
Not a statistician either.
They are an existing domain expert, a veteran logistics coordinator, or a director of marketing, or a regional sales manager.
Yes.
How exactly does an organization take a professional with 20 years of traditional operational experience and suddenly train them to think in complex data queries?
Because the training does not focus on syntax or coding.
They aren't learning C++N.
No, not at all. It focuses on analytical framing.
Yeah.
The domain expert already possesses the most critical asset, which is an intimate, nuanced understanding of the business's daily pressure points.
They know the business inside and out.
Right. Their role is not to write the Python script. Their role is to look at a persistent operational problem and formulate the precise hypothesis that a technical analyst needs to test.
Ah, so they bridge the gap between executive strategy and data execution.
Exactly. The article uses a hospitality example that really clarifies this division of labor.
The hotel in Pokhara.
Yes. A general manager running a hotel in Pokhara possesses deep domain expertise regarding the local tourism lifecycle. They understand their market instinctively.
And that general manager does not need to learn machine learning architecture.
Not at all. However, through targeted data literacy training, they learn the art of the possible. They realize they no longer have to base their pricing on last year's static occupancy rates.
They learn to formulate the right query. They
Yes,
ask, can we build a model that correlates our real-time room availability with the volume of inbound flight schedules from major hubs like Delhi, cross-referenced with local precipitation forecasts to automatically adjust our daily room rates?
exactly that. The business imperative is translated into a highly specific data objective.
Which is then handed to a small, versatile technical team, or even just a single internal analyst to actually execute.
Because the translator ensures the technical team is solving a problem that actually impacts a bottom line rather than pursuing interesting but totally commercially useless data projects.
So, what does this all mean for the broader organizational strategy? It suggests that the perceived tech talent shortage is actually a misdiagnosed problem.
Entirely misdiagnosed.
The competitive advantage does not come from importing a massive, isolated department of data scientists who don't understand your core business.
It comes from upskilling the experts you already have on payroll, making them data literate.
You embed empirical thinking directly into every existing department.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it leads us directly to the concluding thesis of the article, the strategic outlook.
Because enterprises standing at this operational crossroads essentially have two diverging paths.
The first is the path of inertia.
Right, inertia, which involves maintaining the status quo, treating data as a byproduct rather than an asset,
Keeping IT as an isolated cost center.
and continuing to rely on historical reporting and executive intuition.
But the long-term consequence of that inertia is incredibly severe. As markets inevitably become more integrated, local enterprises will face incursions from hyper-efficient, highly digitized foreign competitors.
Entities operating out of sophisticated data environments in India or China.
And those competitors do not rely on local intuition.
No, they don't.
They will deploy analytics to instantly understand regional consumer behavior, optimize local supply chains with mathematical precision, and execute dynamic pricing strategies.
A mid-sized local firm relying on gut instinct simply cannot compete in a margin war against a mathematically optimized competitor.
They'll bleed margin first, then volume, leading to a systemic erosion of their market position.
So what's the alternative? The alternative strategy outlined in the text is the alpha path.
The alpha path requires a fundamental classification shift at the board level. Leadership must begin treating internal data as a core productive asset.
Bearing the same strategic weight as financial capital or physical infrastructure.
Yes, they must mandate the cultivation of data translators and focus on securing small, high-impact victories.
Like the predictive supply chain modeling we discussed.
Right, to continually prove the return on investment and build organizational momentum.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The article stresses that the ultimate barrier to executing this alpha path is not financial.
And it is not technological either.
No, the true friction point is deeply psychological.
It's all about mindset.
It requires addressing the legacy of the traditional business model, frequently referred to in the region as Lala culture.
Where a single executive, or Sethji, directs the enterprise based on decades of accumulated personal intuition and relationship building. And we have to analyze that objectively because that traditional centralized handshake-driven model was historically incredibly successful.
It built massive empires.
Right? In an environment where reliable data was scarce. A veteran leader's deeply honed intuition was the most powerful algorithm available.
It was the only algorithm available. But the operational environment has fundamentally changed.
The data is no longer scarce. It is abundant, provided you stop hoarding it as dead logs.
So the psychological conflict arises when an executive who has successfully relied on their instinct for 30 years is suddenly confronted with empirical data that contradicts their worldview.
It is a profound test of leadership because the transition requires a seasoned executive to look at a predictive model, maybe driven by translated customer complaints or unstructured driver logs, and accept that their historic intuition is no longer the most accurate read of the market.
That is hard to do.
Very hard. It demands an organizational culture where objective transparency supersedes executive ego.
Where leadership is actively willing to be proven wrong by the mathematics of their own operations. And navigating that friction is really the defining challenge. So, to synthesize the strategic roadmap we have analyzed today.
Number one, organizations must immediately audit their digital storage and stop treating unstructured intelligence as dead logs.
Number two, management must deploy pragmatic foundational AI to extract the strategic why from the operational what.
Number 3, companies can bypass external talent shortages by training their internal domain experts to operate as data translators.
And finally, ultimately, none of these tactical shifts matter unless leadership possesses the humility to transition from an intuition-based culture to an empirically driven enterprise.
This raises an important question, one that pushes the boundaries of the strategic framework we have discussed today.
I'm intrigued.
We have examined how data can optimize logistics, prevent customer attrition, and refine pricing. But what happens when the unstructured data reveals a terminal truth about a company's core product?
A truth that the foundational leadership fundamentally refuses to accept.
Exactly. If an enterprise's entire identity and legacy were built upon a founder's historic intuition, at what critical juncture does empirical data force a total, painful operational pivot that human ego actively resists?
When the data tells you everything you know is wrong.
Right. How does a leadership team negotiate with their own data when it objectively indicates that their life's work requires a complete reinvention?
That is a deeply complex and vital strategic dilemma to consider. Thank you for engaging with this deep dive today. We encourage you, the listener, to evaluate the dead logs sitting within your own operational purview and consider how you might extract the invisible wealth hidden within them. Until our next analysis.